Another big one in the Bronx tonight means another big spot for Cole Ragans. We'll dive into his start in tonight's game next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Run Odyssey, and Run YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, some co-hosting, and a little bit of producing as well. And in fact, tonight, after the game, I'll be having a little bit of a Royals post-game on 810, and then after the Chiefs game, I'll just bleed into that and do a Chiefs post-game. So it's going to be a very long night for me. So if you're wondering where my recap will be after tonight's game, unfortunately, not going to be on this podcast, but you can check me out on 810 WHB for both Royals and Chiefs. So, which is why I wanted to get an episode out before the game so we could recap what happened on Saturday and preview tonight's matchup in the Bronx. Today's show is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. It is no secret that tonight is probably the game that we look at and we will likely look back on when this series is done as what turned everything, what changed everything. Of course, there are going to be games, and hopefully, 5 of them or 4 of them in the Royals' favor, but we know there's going to be intense games like there was on Saturday. There's going to be decisions that are made that don't work out, and that will be your moment you'll turn back to and say, when that happened, that's when the series turned. But to me, in terms of just outcome and momentum, it doesn't get any more important than tonight. Because here's what's at stake tonight going into it. You've already lost game 1. And I think the goal going into the Bronx was take 1. That's always the goal when you're playing in the postseason of take 1 on the road, split on the road, and come back and do damage at home. Of course, when you're at home and you're like the Yankees opening up the series at home, you are hoping that you sweep them and you go into their house just needing 1. And that's exactly what the Yankees are thinking right now. So going into tonight, after the Royals lost 6-5 on Saturday night, if they lose, you pretty much know this series is wrapped up. It's not impossible to overcome. I believe 8 teams have overcome a 2-0 deficit before in the ALDS. But to me, when you're asking this team to win 3 straight, including one of those being back in New York, and you'll have to win back-to-back games without Cole Ragans, seems like a tall task. I'm not saying anything you don't already know. But the flip side to this, the optimistic side to this, is that if the Royals win, now you've got the momentum on your side coming back home, in which you're going to have 2 home playoff games. That is not to say they're shoo-ins to be wins. That is not to say that the Royals are going to come back and demolish the Yankees. It's not saying any of that. But there is such a thing as momentum. And when you look at how an ALDS series is lined up, and there are home games for you, regardless, there's home games for both sides, right? At bare minimum, the lower seed gets 1 home playoff game. So when you're looking at how this series is lined up, you know you need to split in New York to get an extra game at home. You want to take the second one. Like that's being, nitpicky. That's maybe being a little bit greedy when you're just talking about splitting a series or splitting a road trip. Well, I'm saying that because the Royals lost game 1 and for the fact that they won't play after tonight until they go back to Kauffman Stadium. So if the Royals had won on Saturday night, I think we'd all be feeling great right now because tonight wouldn't have this type of pressure. But if they were to lose game 2, now the Yankees take a little bit of juice going into Kansas City, though that wouldn't really change the atmosphere for Royals fans because it was going to be packed whether they were down 2-0, up 2-0, or split 1-1. But tonight, to me, I think can really change the complexion and can change the overall morale of this series. Because if you win tonight, I think you could leave the Bronx going, man, we really let one slip on game one, though the Yankees probably feel like, hey, we should have demolished the Royals in game one. We left so many guys on base. We didn't really have that big time bases clearing hit, and the Royals hung around. They got the lead a couple of times. There's a couple different ways you can look at it. I'm purely speaking from the lens of a Royals fan. The Royals could look at this and say, hey, we walked 8 guys. Our pitching staff wasn't sharp. We didn't score for the final 2 innings after, having a good game plan off of Garrett Cole. Then if you win tonight, you go, man, we feel good about how we match up. And now we get to go back to Kansas City and play in front of our home fans in a playoff game for the first time in 9 years. That's what's the positive if you win tonight. If you lose tonight, of course you're on the ropes. Your season's on the line. But also everybody went into the year, or this series for that matter, thinking that, they're not going to take the Yankees to 5. The Yankees are going to win this series. So at that point, it comes down to, let's just see what happens. You are absolutely just trying to fight your way off the ropes. All the pressure is on the Yankees, and it's going to be that way, even if the Royals take a series lead at some point, because they would then be the team that's on the ropes, and there's no way that you can lose a playoff series to the Kansas City Royals, who lost 106 games a year ago. We've all discussed this. We have brought this up, that the pressure's on the Yankees side. No matter what happens, no matter what the lead is in the game, lead is in the series, the pressure is on New York. But tonight, if you actually think you have a shot at winning this series, it's must win. You've probably listened to this podcast long enough, if you're a loyal listener, that you have heard me on episodes say before, I don't use the term must win a lot unless it's actually must win, right? If the Royals lose tonight, well, then Wednesday becomes a must win. And in fact, every other game the rest of the series would be a must win. Tonight, I'm going to bend my own rules a little bit and say it is a must win, because I just don't see a way in which you win that series if you fall behind 2-0, right? I can't see that. I can't see that being possible. Not with a 2-0 series deficit. I hope to be wrong if that's the case. Absolutely. I'm not rooting against the Royals in that spot, and I want to be right. I would much rather be wrong if they fell behind 2-0 and won 3 straight. I just don't know if they're a team that's built to come from behind 2-0. They are much rather a better team and built to take a win like tonight if they can get it done and ride that momentum. Because Kauffman Stadium, I'm going to be out there on Wednesday. Probably not going to be out there on Thursday just because I have to do post-game right after that for 8-10. But the place is going to be rocking. That, to me, will be one of the most electrifying atmospheres that October has seen so far. I mean, this is a fan base that's been deprived of playoff baseball for a long time. It's a night game. It's the Yankees. It's going to be crazy. Towels will be waving. We all know that's what's going to be in store. Another layer to this is that the Yankees are using Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon game 1, game 2. We knew that. It's how you line it up when you got a bye. You got your number 1 and your number 2. Clark Schmidt's going to be going game 3. Likely Seth Lugo for the Royals in game 3. Game 4, I'd imagine it's going to be Heel against Michael Wacha. And then it would line it up to go Garrett Cole and Cole Ragans game 5, unless the Royals went up 2-1. And then Thursday becomes a must-win for the Yankees, and I think they would throw Garrett Cole then. That would be my initial guess. Again, I'm just speculating. I'm just guessing on all of that. But to me, this team, speaking of this Royals team, needs tonight to go their way. Because you take that last one in the Bronx, and you come back and you're guaranteed 2 at Kauffman Stadium, man, that's what you live for. That's what this season can be leading up to. And then you take the first one in Kansas City. I know I'm putting the cart ahead of the horse. You've heard me say that phrase a lot. You do that, and now you're just playing as the severe underdog. You're trying to cap off the Cinderella story, because everybody knows that's what the Royals are. They view themselves as, and equal to the Yankees because they're a confident group. But we all know on the surface, to the national media, the Royals are severe underdogs going up against the New York Yankees. But tonight, to me, it's what's going to decide this series. And whether it be Yankees fans commenting on these videos, I know a couple have Orioles fans did as well. So that's good that our podcast is making our way to other fan bases. I think Yankees fans know it too. They win tonight, they win the series. Not mathematically, not actually, but all the momentum going to Kansas City would be on the Yankees side. Of course, the Royals would have an off day to regroup, but at that point, every single game you're playing for your life, where the Yankees don't have one, but two buffer games. And they get to go back home if it goes to a game 5. Now, we all know that if you blow a 2-0 lead and there is a game 5, you kind of side with the team that forced the game 5. But to me, I think this Yankees team knows tonight is massively important. Same thing for the Royals, which is why Cole Ragans is going tonight. Now he's got enough rest. This is the guy you want out there. Again, you live and die with Cole Ragans on the bump. If it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well. This is your ace. This is who you want on the mound. This is the guy you want to even up the series. He was phenomenal against Baltimore. And how many times have I said on this podcast that Cole Ragans is pitching in the biggest game of his professional career? I've said it 5 or 6 times this year. Well, we're going to make it a 7th time because tonight becomes the biggest game of his life, whether it be high school, college, pee-wee, little league, big leagues, minor league, doesn't matter. Tonight, of course, goes without saying, it is the biggest start of his life. No other guy had wanted the bump for the Royals than Cole Ragans. We're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on game 1, some good, some bad, and some stuff that really frustrated me. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. I want to give a shout out to our first sponsor today in Arena Club. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auctioning. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform that you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnMLB with the code LockedOnMLB for 10% off on your first purchase over at Arena Club. Well, there's a lot to discuss about Game 1, and I had a great time watching it. It has been a blast in these first 3 games that everything has been high intensity. It's been stressful. They've been good baseball games. I mean, minus the 8 walks part, right? That's always going to frustrate you a little bit in watching the pitching staff be a little bit timid. But overall, I think if you are a Royals fan, you can't be disappointed with how they've played in the first 3. I mean, yes, they lose in game 1, not a good thing. They also went toe-to-toe with the number 1 team in the American League and a team that humiliated them at Kauffman Stadium back in June. We all remember that series. The Yankees were coming in. It was in the middle of the Royals gauntlet, and the Yankees just thrashed them. Seth Lugo threw in game 1, and then it was a disaster with Brady Singer throwing in game 2, and then Dan Altavilla threw in game 3. Alec Marsh pitched really well in game 4, then the bullpen blew it, and Michael Garcia walked it off against Clay Holmes. But overall, that Yankees team thrashed them. And at that point in time, I think everybody thought the Royals are not in the same league as the Yankees. And yet here they are in October at Yankee Stadium playing good baseball, playing competitive baseball, didn't roll over. There probably were some people out there that thought that the Yankees would steamroll the Royals, and that still could happen. Let's all be honest here. Just because it was close in game 1 doesn't mean it's going to be close tonight or in game 3. They could walk out of this series with a sweep, and this all becomes irrelevant a little bit. But to me, the way the Royals played, mainly offensively, I got nothing but respect for because they jump out 1-0. They were hitting Garrett Cole hard. I mean, Alex Zumwalt, Keone Duran, all those guys that were involved in the game plan, I tip my cap to them because that was a damn good game plan off of one of the game's best divisional series pitchers. I mean, Garrett Cole was undefeated in the ALDS, and he's their ace. He's the number one. Even though he didn't throw a full season, this is the guy they want in elimination games. If the Yankees get to the World Series, Game 1 starter, Game 7 starter if it happens. We know that about Garrett Cole. Yet the Royals came out just ambushing him. Michael Massey almost goes deep in the first pitch of the game. Bobby Witt Jr. hits 109 to the wall in left center, and Aaron Judge tracks it down. Vinny Pasquantino ropes one to center. Then they start getting runs off him. They start piling together some hits. There was a bad send by Vance Wilson. I think that ended up costing them a much bigger inning, but still they came away with a run. Then you have MJ Melendez, right? I did predict it, though. I kind of was walked into that prediction. I'll say that somebody held my hand into that prediction because they said, what's your hot take for Game 1? Well, the only hot take I can give is that he homers. And he did homer. It was a short porch homer, mainly to right center, but still a shorter one. And that put the Royals back out in front after Gleyber Torres had a short porch home run, go up 2-1, and the Royals went up 3-2. And here's my thing about the short porch. It's frustrating for sure, and it's really just right field where it kind of becomes a huge thing. The Royals also are playing in the same ballpark. So let's get that out of the way here. If the Yankees hit a home run into the short porch tonight, and they hit one in Game 5, if there is a Game 5, look, the Royals can do the same thing. They can guide one over to right field and put one in the first or second row, and it's going to count as 1, 2, 3, or 4. Right? So let's turn that attention away from the short porch. As frustrating as it is, hey, the Royals can do it too, and MJ Melendez benefited a little bit from the short porch. There are shorter dimensions in right center field. But offensively, I liked what they did. They responded every time the Yankees took the lead until they finally got ahead 6-5, thanks to a controversial replay call at second base that everybody's been talking about. And I think that's where my gripe will be. I'm usually not one to constantly blame umpires because I am of the belief of if you let an umpire dictate the outcome of your game, you put yourself in that spot to begin with, right? And there were missed calls. It's the human part of the game. I get frustrated with umpires. Everybody does. We know that. But this specific situation was a human error. The call on the field being safe. I can't blame the umpire for calling Jazz Chisholm safe because it's a closer play. And plus on the replay, it's like a sliver of light that you can see on the tag to Jazz Chisholm's foot that Michael Massey had. And you can't make that call 100%, right every single time. If he calls him out, he's probably out on the review, right? That's the way it happens. I believe Michael Lorenzen said in the postgame, I was prepping like Jazz Chisholm was going to be at second base just because you have to. That's the mentality of it. And in this case, I thought there was enough to overturn it. And that ended up costing the Royals because Jazz Chisholm comes around to score on an Alex Verdugo single. If you want to play the baseball part of it and not blame the umpiring crew or New York and the replay committee, all that stuff, if you want to blame something else, I can point to some things, right? Michael Lorenzen gives up the leadoff single. I'm not going to say that's a blame game there. It was a good at bat, a good swing by Jazz Chisholm. The 3-2 pitch that goes down in the dirt, Salvador Perez gets it and throws down to second base. If he has a mildly good throw, Jazz Chisholm's out by a mile. But he didn't have a good throw. He didn't get a good grip. The ball sailed on him. And Jazz Chisholm was able to beat it, at least in real time. Now, we were able to look, and it looked 50-50. Umpire goes with safe. But if Salvador Perez, as he's done so many times before, makes an accurate throw there, or at least a 70% of an accurate throw, he's out. 2 outs, nobody on, you feel good about it. The other blame part of it is giving up an RBI single to Alex Verdugo. That part I can blame. Just not a very good pitch from Michael Lorenzen to a guy that's at the bottom of the Yankees order and a guy that has struggled all season long. But I understand if it's the umpires you want to blame. Earlier on in the game, when the Yankees got a couple, what happened when the bullpen came in, couldn't throw strikes. Angel Serba couldn't throw strikes. Sam Long couldn't throw strikes. John Schreiber walked in a run. What all led to that, or what started all of that disaster? Well, a 2-2 pitch that wasn't called strike 3 to Gleyber Torres. So that's a mistake right there. But there were missed calls at the zone on both sides. I know it. Not everybody wants to hear it. It can be frustrating, right? But there were certainly situations the Royals put themselves in that I wasn't a huge fan of. Walking 8, not going to sit well with that. Guys giving up hits to Alex Verdugo, I'm not going to sit well with that. Yeah, sometimes you get a little bit unlucky, but to me, I was very pleased with the way the Royals competed. I thought the bullpen was really fine with the exception of that blow-up inning where Angel Serpa couldn't throw strikes trying to get out of Walker's jam. Then John Schreiber walked in the run. Sam Long wasn't very good in his short time in relief. Lucas Erceg was great. But overall, that could have been a lot worse. The Yankees could have blown open that game when Serpa couldn't throw strikes and John Schreiber came in and walked in the run. It could have been an absolute disaster at that point. But they found a way to limit the damage and give themselves a chance. And going into the night, I think you feel confident about them bouncing back because walking 8 guys in one game, that can't fly. That's not going to win you many baseball games out there. And you're hoping that the umpiring crew doesn't, for lack of a better term, screw you over again. But also, if that situation happens again, Salvador Perez is probably telling himself, hey, I'm going to make a better throw next time around where it's not even a discussion. We're not even going to a replay. But I can understand the frustration. And certainly at the time, I was pissed off that it was not overturned because I thought there was enough to overturn it at that point. I think a lot of baseball fans out there thought there was going to be enough to overturn it. But they'll get another shot tonight to overcome that loss in game 1. It's going to be beginning here shortly, probably the next hour by the time I'm recording this or posting this, excuse me. So, yeah, should be a lot of fun. Cole Ragans, Carlos Rodon on the bump tonight. Game 2 in the Bronx before the Royals head back to Kauffman Stadium, looking to even up the series at 6:38 tonight. First pitch, or probably would be around, what would that be, 9 to 9:30. They want to even it up. It's going to be beginning at 6:38, a little bit later than it was on Saturday. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, I'm going to tell you a big positive for 2025 and why I'm excited for it. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our title sponsor in Booking.com. Explore those cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. With hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your rival city during the postseason. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball stadium's cuisine. Luckily on Booking.com, you can find the stadium stay that's right just for you. With Booking.com's wide variety of choice across the U.S., you can go incognito to all of your rival city. And Booking.com delivers exactly the right U.S. stay for you. And Booking.com can also help you book a stay that's close to your home team or your rival's stadium. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. So book today at Booking.com. Also want to let you know about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, and go get started today. And one of the totals I did see, at least this morning on FanDuel, was Cole Ragans in the strikeout total. I use him more than any other bet on FanDuel, and I think the strikeout total was 5.5. And in a game like this, and with how he looked in Baltimore, I'm taking the over on that. I think I sound like a broken record with FanDuel and Cole Ragans, but I always take the over on a strikeout total because to me, it feels a little bit too low. But if you're also thinking on total bases, home runs, hits, there's a lot of great options you can do with other guys in the lineup. But to me, I think the safest bet is the over for Cole Ragans and the strikeout total. I know I should not be talking about 2025 just yet, and I promised everybody that I was going to do a deep dive into free agents, trades, all that type of stuff, what the roster may look like when this season is officially done. And hopefully, we're still another week away, 2 weeks, 3 weeks away from that, just trying to take it game by game and to follow the Royals' motto of today. There is no tomorrow without today. So me jumping ahead and talking about 2025 is maybe not the best thing to be talking about, but I have gotten enough questions where I thought it would be nice to take a little bit of a peek into 2025. And one thing in particular, I'm really excited to talk about and to look ahead to. Number one, I think it is a massive, massive deal that the Royals didn't just make the playoffs, but won a playoff series. In fact, if they would have won a playoff game, I think there would have been a lot of support behind that. But the fact that they have won a playoff series, they have brought playoff baseball back to Kauffman Stadium in a year that felt so improbable. This is what I think is going to happen. Going into the offseason, no matter how this season ends up, if they fall short in the ALDS, I think this remains the same. If they fall short in the ALCS, I think it remains the same. Basically, anything in which they fall short, this motto will be the same. They win the World Series, different conversation there, but they still have the second lowest odds to win the World Series. But to me, because they won a playoff series, it now puts you in that mode of, okay, we're actually there. We are a competitive bunch, and we should be a team that is expected to go back to the postseason. And here's why. Your rotation, for the most part, is going to be back. Michael Wacha is the one that's up in the air because of the opt-out. I still believe he's going to opt back in, but we'll see on that. Salvador Perez is going to be back. Will he have the same type of year? TBD. But it also feels like we thought Salvador Perez would have a bad year for like 3 years in a row now, and he continues to play well. Vinny will be back, and he'll be healthy. He's at first base. Massey will be back, and he'll be healthy. He'll be at second base. Bobby Witt Jr., of course, is going to be at shortstop. In left field and at third base, I think you've got question marks there. In center field, I think it's going to be Kyle Isbell, and I think Hunter Renfroe is going to be back in right field. Your rotation, Ragans is back. Lugo is going to be back. I expect Wacha to be back, and then you could probably have a combination of Alec Marsh, Brady Singer, Daniel Lynch. Maybe you go back and bring Michael Lorenzen in. Those are things you can contemplate a little bit. Bullpen-wise, I think everybody's coming back in the bullpen. And I think there are options in the minor leagues like a Steven Cruz, like an Evan Sisk that could give you a little bit of a boost early on in the year. But Lucas Erceg's back, and you're not going to have to worry about getting a closer. And he's got a lot more years of control. Hunter Harvey's going to be back and healthy. John Schreiber's going to be back. Chris Bubich is going to be back. Carlos Hernandez can be back. Angel Serpa is going to be back. James MacArthur hopefully can bounce back and have a better year. So all these things start coming into fruition, if you will. They start forming, and you go, man, there's a lot of pieces that you not only have locked in, but you feel good about. Last year, the Royals didn't have that. It was a lot of, we're banking on this guy to be good. Now you feel good about Michael Massey. Now you feel good pretty much about Kyle Isbell. Now you kind of know what Hunter Renfroe is if he can stay healthy. You know what Vinny is. You know what Garcia is. You know what Melendez is. And why I put the question marks in left field and third base is because I think with as much as Matt Quatrero mixes and matches the lineup, a bench player is not really a bench player for the Royals. They play more often than not. Think Garrett Hampson. Think Adam Frazier. Two guys that won't be back next year. Paul DeYoung, Tommy Pham won't be back next year. So to me, the Royals can look at third base and left field and go, okay, we're going to spend money on those spots because we need more consistent bats in the lineup. We're trying to take the next step. We had 86 wins. We want to get to 90 and 95 and win this division. And that's what I think you're going to see commitment-wise, why I think it's a huge positive for winning a playoff series. Because now you have in the record books, in the history books, hey, we overcame a 106-loss season. We spent money and we won a playoff series and still have a chance to win more. The season's not done just yet. But to me, from the commitment we saw from John Sherman and J.J. Picollo last offseason, I could see it in a different way, but even better in the offseason going into 2025. Now that you've got more sure things on the roster, you can funnel more money to one position or two positions and go big instead of trying to piece together little things here and there. They wanted to overhaul the rotation. They got it done. They know what Cole Ragans is. They know what Seth Lugo is. They know what Wacha is. They know what Singer is. They know what Marsh is. They know what Daniel Lynch and Chris Bubich can be. But to me, having that bullpen stabilized, that's a good thing. Because now, I'm going to throw out a name there. I don't think it's likely, but like Alex Bregman, going to be 31 years old going into spring training or maybe a little bit after that. I think he's 30 and a half right now. He's going to be a big name free agent at third base. And it wouldn't shock me if the Royals tried to make a play if they thought that he would be a good upgrade over Michael Garcia, and Garcia moves into kind of that super utility role, which I think he'd shine in. MJ Melendez, he played great on Saturday. Maybe he becomes the bench bat, the outfield bench bat that plays, 2 times a week. But you go with more of a stable guy in left field that gives really good defense and can be a top of the order bat. That's the exciting part. And the last thing I'll add to that is that now I think the fan support will really be there early on next year. You're going to see bigger crowds at Kauffman Stadium, more of a buy-in because now they've seen it, just like they did in 2015 after the World Series run in 14. Hey, Royals baseball is fun to watch. They're good. I'm going to spend money to go out there and watch this team compete. And I can see a similar thing happening in 2025. All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every aspect of the playoff picture. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we're going to have a recap of what happened in Game 2 and break down what we expect to happen back at Kauffman Stadium for playoff baseball. That's coming up tomorrow on Locked On Royals. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.